Good afternoon, vinyl community, YouTube, anybody else who's stumbling across me on this Saturday afternoon. It's about 20 past three in the UK. Yeah, usual pissing it down with rain. Quite mild at the moment, but certainly not gallivanting weather or weather that's going to encourage you to want to go out and stretch your legs and breathe in the air, so to speak, and do all those wonderful, healthy things that we're supposed to do on a regular basis. Okay, why am I here? The usual question. Well, I'm here to help celebrate peace. Sounds from the West Coast. He's recently uh, reached and now surpassed 200 subscriptions. So yeah, well, very, very well done, Pete. He's done really, really well there. And to sort of celebrate that, he decided that he was going to put together a small contest for us, which he's called Laying the Foundations. And so, what does he mean by that? Okay, well, basically, I think the general gist of this is to sort of think about and show records that were sort of not necessarily your favorite albums in your collection or records, but moreover, sort of records that were sort of milestones, perhaps, or sort of, they were records that set you sort of to go off in a certain direction because of the enjoyment you got out of that record or whatever. So yeah, sort of. I guess I sort of, as I understand it, it's kind of records that have a specific meaning for you to what you got into them, to go off on a certain and force you to go off in a certain direction because of those records. So yeah, I haven't explained that very well at all. Sorry, my usual rambling. I'm really, really sober today as well, so I'm just on elderberry juice. That's cordial actually, but same difference. Anyway, I'm going to shut up. Shall I just turn this off and start again? Right. Okay. So here we go. So anyway, I'm sure you get hopefully you get the gist of what it is that I'm doing here. So anyway, so yeah, first off, first record I'm going to show is an album the reason I'm including it in this is because it's an album that I bought, which was it was a milestone in some ways because it was a few years after I'd got married, and a couple of years after my son was born, and with all that happening in my life, records, music as a whole had taken a bit of a kind of a back seat, as I'm sure anybody who's started a family will probably be able to empathise there, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I was still kind of listening to the radio and so on, but and putting on the odd CD, but I certainly hadn't bought or wasn't looking to buy or procure any kind of new music or sort of. I mean, my vinyl collection was sort of stowed away upstairs in one of the cupboards. I hadn't, I think I'd sold my record player. I still had my amp, but I had nothing to play them on. I hadn't played records for 10 years or more. So there was this kind of big hiatus, and it sort of needed something to sort of get me back, get me my mojo going again, if you like, to get me back into the zone of really listening again and wanting to buy buy records again. And yeah, I heard a song called Mykonos on the radio by a band called the Fleet Foxes, and I just thought that it was, you know, some sort of great song from the late '60s that kind of had slipped the net and I'd never heard of, because the way it was recorded and everything, and the vocals, the harmonies. I just thought, yeah, this is just fantastic, fantastic song. And then this album came out, which was their debut sometime afterwards. And yeah, obviously the big single off it, White Winter Hymnal, which is probably still their most kind of famous song, I guess. Yeah, I went out and bought this. Not this. This is a vinyl reproduction copy that came out later in the Fleet Foxes collection box. But I bought the initial CD that had also the bonus CD with it that had the EP that Mykonos was on. So I think that was recorded. It was called Sun Giant, and it came out actually before the debut album was released. But yeah, what a fantastic album this is. It's kind of very highly critically acclaimed. It's sort of in the, in the book of 1,000 albums to listen to before you die. But there's a real kind of split camp. You either get people that like the Fleet Foxes, or I've certainly come across several people that absolutely don't like them, and they certainly don't get shown that much on the vinyl community. So, but yeah, I mean, just the opener, "Sun It Rises," with the great sort of percussion and sort of very folky sort of vocals and the feel, but then those kind of late '60s psychedelic guitar, just great. I mean, reminiscent of sort of Crosby, Stills, Nash, Neil Young, a lot of that West Coast stuff. But also, I think Robin Pecknold, right? I think he was very much into sort of Appalachian music and a lot of sort of traditional American country music and folk music as well. So kind of all mixed in a kind of big melting pot on this record, which for me makes a really, really interesting listen. And I must have had this CD or the CD version of this in my car for probably the best part of 3 years, and I used to just play it all the time. My son and my wife got utterly sick of it. Maybe not surprisingly, but yeah. So the record that got me back into certainly buying CDs and buying music again. Anyway, okay. Next one. I apologise, by the way. Some of these you'll have seen, regulars to my channel. If you go through, you've probably seen a lot of these records before. So, but obviously, I needed to show them again because it's in the context of the competition. So, okay. Next one is a great what I'd call a prog pop album, I guess. This is Peter Gabriel's first solo album, Car, as it's sometimes known, because I think the first 3 albums, none of them were titled. So you've got kind of Car, Scratch, Melt, etc. But this is my favourite. It's still my favourite of any Peter Gabriel records. I absolutely love this record. Just fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I think it was described as a smorgasbord of songs and styles, and it really is. Produced by Bob Ezrin, who obviously did Alice Cooper and Pink Floyd, The Wall, amongst a lot of other big rock, classic rock albums. But yeah, so big sound. There's orchestra on this as well in the case of Down the Dolce Vita. But yeah, I mean the eerie kind of weirdness of Moribund the Burgermeister kicking the album off, and then it goes into the wonderful folky Salisbury Hill, which the lyrics of a lot of that was about his kind of, his breakup with the rest of the band members in Genesis. And I think that was kind of like, a bit of a sort of exorcism for him, in terms of maybe some of the bad feeling and so on, maybe that was there in the latter days of being in the group. But yeah, I mean, I think the reason why this album's so strong is because it's contains, I think, a lot of material of music that he would have probably have recorded with Genesis had he stayed, but obviously, didn't obviously subsequently, so and ended up forming the majority of the songs on this album. But yeah, fabulous record, and this basically started me on a kind of rabbit hole of going down and listening to a lot more prog, particularly Genesis and the Peter Gabriel era Genesis in particular, which is far and away my favourite era with Genesis. Fabulous. Okay, I'm going to move on a bit because we're already up to 11 minutes and I've only done 2 albums. So, when I was traveling in Sweden many years ago, I stayed with a guy who, for a while, who was, he was, first of all, he was a punk fan, but he was also a reggae fan. And he got to a situation in his life where he'd amassed big collections of both, but because of circumstances, and this is something I guess that we've all done, he had to sell off one of his collections. So instead of selling off just ones from each one, he decided just to get rid of one and keep the other. So he sold his punk and decided to stick with his reggae. So I mean, obviously, I kind of stayed with him for a couple of months while I was in Sweden, and just listened to a lot of his of reggae and dub and stuff that I'd never listened to before. And this was one that he played me that I really liked, and I actually went out the following week to a local record shop and managed to find a copy. And this is an artist called Demba Conta, and this is his album Monkey Business. The full name of the band is actually Demba Conta and the Rubber Dub Band. So this is actually a Swedish reggae artist from the 1980s, and obviously hitherto staying with this guy. I'd never heard of this guy before, wasn't familiar at all. I seem to recall him saying that he has some kind of it's almost like a prince of some kind. He's got some kind of royal bloodline somewhere or other. I'm not sure. I may be completely wrong there. I don't know. I may have to research that a bit better. But I seem to remember him mentioning that. I mean, this is a really great record. Long tracks, 5 minutes. 5 to 6 minutes. I mean, it's as the one of the songs is titled "Reggae in a Swedish Style," and it's if you can kind of imagine how that would sound, it's sort of a bit like that, I guess, whatever that is. It's a kind of genre of music that beforehand I'd never really, I mean, apart from sort of Bob Marley and maybe sort of Toots and the Maytals and Desmond Dekker and some of those kind of artists, I've never really listened to that much ska and reggae, and that certainly sent me off on a bit of a rabbit hole. I actually found this as well the same day at the same shop, which was Dennis Brown, Words of Wisdom. So sort of keeping on that sort of reggae kick that I've got on. This is a great record from 1979. and had a few hits on this. Ain't That Loving You, Monkey in My Pocket, the title track as well. Yeah, really nice. What do they call it? Roots rock, I think it is. Roots rock reggae. Okay, so probably one of the earliest albums that I ever heard when I was about 4 or 5 years old. I've shown this on a previous video. Absolutely, totally got me into, certainly made me aware of kind of 60s music and 60s pop. This is an album of my mum's, and I just played this when I was a kid, both myself and my brother. Absolutely love and still love this album to this day. This is a collection of Beatles oldies but goldies. Fantastic album, still in my opinion. I think the greatest Beatles compilation ever. I might be biased because of the nostalgia of it for myself, but I just think it's wonderful. I mean, it's just goes through. I mean, this was released, I think, just prior to Revolver coming out in '66, so goes through all their early and sort of early period, from '63 to '65. Yeah, oh, there is Paperback Writer on here, so Eleanor Rigby, sorry. And obviously, yeah, Paperback Writer's a great '66 hit. But yeah, I mean, I just listened to this as a kid and just, I couldn't believe, that there was a band that just, because I didn't even know who the Beatles were. I mean, I wasn't born in that era, so it was just a record that my mum had, and I used to play it and just loved it, but I was just, even then, just astonished that a band could just come out with such a wide variety of styles and types of music and different, just different vibes, and wonderful. And yeah. Okay, sort of moving on. I've got album here by, I mean, I've always liked female vocal and so on, but this definitely sent me down a rabbit hole of collecting her albums. This is the wonderful French, I think they sometimes call it Yé Yé. This is Franois Hardy. This was there's an album called Franois Hardy. She did a lot of albums actually called, frustratingly, Franois Hardy. So unless you get the catalogue numbers, it's often quite difficult to file them and so on, and find them on Discogs or whatever. But they do show up from time to time, and I pick them up. Ben used to put these aside for me because he knew what a fan I was of her. I mean, great album, Ce Petit Coeur, which I think was a single, which I think is My Little Heart, translates as, I think. Fantastic. Just Le Temps de Souvenir, just wonderful French language pop, superb, wonderfully produced, and she's great. Not everything that she's done is great. I've got a late 70s album of hers, which isn't in the same league as these, I'm still recording today, but great stuff. So another one that sent me off, certainly down the sort of prog sort of rabbit hole, I guess, and I first heard this in the early 80s, and I think the song off this House of the King used to be on a sort of schools program. I seem to remember it being on that, and I always loved it, but it wasn't until years later that I found out that it was by the wonderful Focus. So yeah, I know this is a favourite band of Pete's. He showed Making Waves in his video, and this is their 1972 album, I think. It's a double album. This is Focus 3, and this is about probably third or fourth copy I've owned of this record. This is one of those albums I used to find just totally trashed all the time. And I used to buy copies that, I could never get one with a great cover, and the vinyl was in decent condition as well. There was always skips or it was just noisy. So I ended up buying a repress of this, and this sounds really good. So, lovely, lovely sprawling kind of album. But you've got a lot of music on this, obviously. So I love the first side, Round Goes the Gossip, Love Remembered, beautiful. Sylvia, of course, the big single. And then side 2, you got Focus 3, Answers, Questions, Question, Answers, long pieces. Anonymous 2, the wonderful sort of medieval, almost kind of John Rembornish Elspeth of Nottingham, which is fantastic. House of the King, of course, wonderful, wonderful song, one of my favourites. Then there's a bonus couple of tracks on this version, as well as the US single version of Hocus Pocus. It seems bizarre that was released as a single in America, because it's an extended version, of about 6 or 7 minutes. It's got this kind of crazy kind of singing from Thies van Leer, where he's going kind of sort of all over the place, and it's just totally bizarre and quite ridiculous, but it sort of works in the context of the song. So good stuff, and great Dutch prog band Focus. Okay, so I'm going to speed up because we're now up to 20 minutes. So I tried to not show this record, but I really can't help it, because I listened to this, heard this when I was a kid. Just totally blew my mind. I then used to listen to it again regularly when I was learning the guitar with a friend of mine from school, and we tried to work out most of the songs on this record, because we just loved it so much. This is Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars, of course, David Bowie, 1972, classic album. Nothing really needs to be said about this, other than it definitely inspired me to play the guitar, because I remember I liked particularly the title track and the little riff. My brother, who was already playing the guitar, and I used to kind of very enviously watch him play, and he showed me the riff, which was the kind of the D chord with the D suspended, and I thought, oh, I can do that, I'll have a go. And I did, and it just set me off on a path with the guitar, and just as I say, I learnt. I was very lucky in having a friend that I was at school with, who we kind of learnt the guitar together, although he was actually more accomplished than I was, certainly at the time, but he had a 12-string like Bowie used to play as well, so had that lovely kind of ringing tone. Fabulous. Okay, so another band that got me into just buying pretty much their entire catalogue, 10cc. I don't know if I've shown this one before. If I have, it's only briefly. But yeah, love their music. My brother was a big 10cc fan. As a kid, I used to listen at the door to him playing this, particularly sheet music, the second album, which is far and away my favourite, but I've shown it so many times, I thought I'd show this one, because this doesn't always get showed. This is their fourth album, How Dare You. Wonderful inner sleeve there. The band are in there somewhere, you just got to kind of search for them. But yeah, this had the singles, Mandy Fly Me, fantastic, with a wonderful acoustic break in the middle, and Art for Art's Sake, last album, of course, that was recorded with Godlin Cream before they left. Another one that absolutely took me on a path that I'd never been on before. I was with a mate that I met on on a course when I was about 18 years old. And we became really, really good friends. And his brother was a big Zeppelin fan. And I'd never, and this was probably the late 80s, about 1987, never really, apart from sort of Stairway to Heaven, Whole Lot of Love, never really explored Led Zeppelin. He was a huge fan, his brother certainly was. And this tape of this, he actually lent me. This is Led Zeppelin III, and just those wonderful acoustic songs, just fantastic. Absolutely love those in Gallows Pole, and yeah, and yeah, just That's the Way. What else is on this? Celebration Day, Friends, fantastic. Those wonderful kind of detuned and sort of strange tunings when Jimmy Page was really playing around with a lot of those kind of things. Yeah, very experimental for Zeppelin, and but yeah, I just love this record, and yeah, it's still probably one of my favourites, if not my favourite in their catalogue. Okay, sticking with as a sort of segue into this, because there was a song called "Hats Off to Roy Harper," famously ending that Led Zeppelin III, and this is Roy Harper. This is Flat Broken Berserk. It's not an album of his, I think I've shown. This is an original on Harvest. Yeah, it's funny. It's one of these ones that's quite common. You see this album quite a lot of his, probably because it was first one that he did on a major label on Harvest. That wonderful prog label there, Green Harvest label. Absolutely love it. Yeah, and Roy Harper. I've spoken about Roy Harper before. He was the artist that got me into kind of folk rock and acoustic guitar playing. Certainly I'd not heard the guitar played in the way that he played it prior to hearing him, because this was before I'd even heard like Bert Jansch or Pentangle or any of that kind of stuff. So yeah, but this is a great one. Got the wonderful Don't You Grieve. Obviously one of his most famous sort of vitriolic songs, I Hate the White Man. One of my absolute favourites is How Does It Feel off this. I absolutely love that song. And then the beautiful Another Day, wonderful ballad. And it's orchestrated on this beautiful, beautiful song. Highly recommend, if you've not heard Roy Harper, it's a pretty good place to start. Highly recommend that. Okay, and finally, this was obviously I've been into a lot of vocal jazz and so on, but not heard any sort of acoustic, any kind of instrumental jazz until getting into the vinyl community and watching a lot of videos of people showing jazz, and particularly the sort of Blue Note series. And this was one that was shown, and I streamed this and absolutely love this. This is Lee Morgan's The Sidewinder. And I just thought, yeah, this is like really, really catchy, sort of appealing to my kind of sort of pop sensibility, I guess, in a jazz record where, you could almost hear like a refrain, and it's like almost like if there was a sort of shortened version of the title track, it would be like a hit, I suppose maybe in the same way that Take 5 would be, or something like that from Dave Brubeck. But yeah, wonderful. And this is, thanks very much. This has sent me down a huge rabbit hole now, collecting a lot of this jazz, and wonderful it is. Okay, so I've got to turn this off before we get to 30 minutes. Otherwise, this is going to be two-part, and I don't want to do that. So thanks very much to Pete for putting this competition together. Very, very well done, Pete, as well. Hope people jump on this competition for you. And all the very best. Cheers, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.